What's going on, everybody? Crypto Headquarters here, and today I want to talk about the potential move to proof of stake for Request Network, and are you guys going to be able to stake your REQ in 2018? Additionally, I'm going to cover the difference between proof of stake versus proof of work in this video, and I'm going to touch on sharding, the Raiden network, and Plasma in regards to how Request is going to move forward with this proof of stake algorithm, and if it does come to fruition, what is going to have to happen. So I'm going to be covering a wide variety of topics regarding the proof of stake algorithm, and if you guys are going to be potentially able to stake your guys' REQ in 2018. So with that said, I'm going to start off with the disclaimer that says none of the information in this video is investment or financial advice. This is just simply my personal opinion. Please do your own research for investing. Invest at your own risk. Don't invest more than you can afford to lose. Consult a financial advisor if necessary. To be fully transparent with you guys, I've talked about Request a ton on my channel. I am invested into Request. I do hold Request at the time of making this video. I'm very bullish on it for 2018, but I'm just saying this to be fully transparent with you guys. And with that said, let's jump right into the video. The first thing that I'm going to talk about is the potential for the proof of stake algorithm to come to the Request network. So you guys aren't going to find a lot of information online regarding proof of stake, and a lot of the stuff that I'm going to be showing you guys in this video is going to come straight from the Request network subreddit. So with that said, somebody asked a question, REQ Q2 staking proof of stake. So they asked that, and the best response that I could get is from Plague Wind, it looks like, and he outlines this very well. So he said that there was an answer from the Request devs in an AMA last year where they were asked about this exact same question. The way they answered it was yes, it is one of the it says opinions. I believe it should be options for the future. It's in the white paper, and it was answered in the AMA in November. So somebody asks, can you stake on the Request network? The short answer is not yet. It is all dependent on the development technology on the Ethereum network, which we're going to cover, which includes Plasma and sharding in particular. Additionally, developers are open to staking, and this coupled with burning tokens makes Request network a must-hold investment. The long answer of this is developers' comments are that they're keeping their options open. So essentially, we don't know yet what the future of staking on Request is. The developers have set up a burning mechanism to help scale the project as tokens are burned for every transaction over time. Thus, the value of the token is increased. So right there, you guys are going to see that while staking is definitely up in the air depending on how the Ethereum network proceeds within the regards to development of the technology, there is a mechanism for burning. So even if staking doesn't come to fruition, you guys will see the value of your Request network tokens individually rise due to the fact that there is a mechanism to burn tokens over time. So that is definitely a plus, and they also say that it should be noted though that the Request network is open to the concept of staking and would readily implement depending on how new technologies are being introduced to the Ethereum network. For further reading, look into the Plasma and sharding on the Ethereum network. Again, we're going to cover that towards the end of the video, but Plague Wind continues to say how this will play out is very vague until further developments in the Ethereum network is made. There could even be the possibility, which I thought was interesting, that Request will fork from the Ethereum network and use staking to secure the network. So with the burning mechanism, gateways as it's known as, and staking, proof of stake, working hand in hand, Request could cater to both developers and create gateways and lay investors who want to create a form of passive income for holding these Request network tokens. So that is the current state of the union regarding proof of stake. This was the best answer I was able to find on the Request network subreddit. So, you know, in conclusion here, to summarize this, it is up in the air depending on whether Request network will move over to proof of stake. It entirely depends on how the Ethereum network is going to move in the future in regards to the development of technology. Are they going to go with Plasma? Are they going to go with sharding? That's going to be covered later. Additionally, it's also interesting to note that the tokens are going to be burned over time, and there's a burning mechanism set up in place. So even if proof of stake doesn't come fully to fruition, you guys will see the value of your guys' Request network individual tokens rise in value due to the scarcity that is going to be created by burning Request network tokens over time. So that's the current state of the union. Something else I am going to point out is a page from the Request network white paper. So if I make this bigger onto your guys' screen, you guys are going to see in Q2, the first thing it says is POC of scaling requests through Plasma chain with proof of stake Request will have to handle a heavy load of transactions. So Request is looking into proof of stake due to the idea that they are going to have to scale rapidly, because Request is going to be a cryptocurrency that is going to handle a heavy load of transaction due to the nature of the Request network project. So they are looking into proof of stake for 2018, even though it is on their roadmap. This isn't anything concrete, as we've seen in previous sections of the video. I just thought this was important to point out, to see that there is some evidence that proof of stake was something in the original plan for the Request network team. So that is where they're at in regards to the white paper and what they have included into that. But again, I am going to reiterate the fact that this is very much in the air in regards to how they're going to go forward with the Ethereum network being an ERC20 token. At this point in the video, I want to cover the difference between proof of stake and proof of work. But in order to do so, I'm going to do this at a very basic level, just explain to you guys what these are in a nutshell. I am in the process of creating a more in-depth video explaining the difference between proof of work and proof of stake. But in an effort to make this video shorter, more concise, and more valuable to you guys, I'm going to explain these quickly. And you guys, if you guys are more interested in this, I'm going to link some videos down in the description that explain these well as I'm going to release my video on the difference between these sometime later this week or maybe later in this month, depending on how long it takes me to get to that. But with that said, the difference between proof of work and proof of stake are two main things. So the first thing you have to understand is that you have to understand proof of work in terms, or excuse me, you have to understand proof of stake in terms of what's happening with proof of work. So proof of work is what happens when miners mine blocks in order to secure the network and gain compensation for doing so. So what happens on a cryptocurrency network is there are blocks, and this block is part of the decentralized ledger. So let's say that you and 100 other people have transactions that need to be validated. These transactions eventually form a block within a blockchain. Miners come along and they mine these blocks, meaning they sacrifice computational power, if that's a word, from their computers, meaning hash rate. So they sacrifice their computer's processing power to solve these blocks. By solving these blocks at the rate they do, they validate the transactions, thus securing the network, and in an effort to compensate these miners, a certain amount of that cryptocurrency is rewarded depending on what miners did the most work, based on their hash rate, based on how much computing power they devoted to said block. So basically, in a nutshell, what happens is miners take these blocks, which are full of transactional data, and they sacrifice their computer's power to solve this puzzle. And once this puzzle is solved, the transactions within that block are validated. Thus, the miners are compensated and the network is more secure. So that is what proof of work is. In addition, proof of stake is very different in a few ways. So proof of stake means that each and every one of you guys have the options to stake your coins, where proof of work is more focused on what kind of hardware you have in your computer and some more technical knowledge. Proof of stake just involves holding the actual cryptocurrency. So in Request network stake, let's say that the minimum requirement to run a node is 10,000 REQ. They have not come out with any information. These are just arbitrary numbers that I'm throwing out there. So let's say that it was 10,000 requests to run a node. You lock up 10,000 requests within this node. And when you do that, these blocks, instead of being mined to validate their transactions, what happens is that there are people called validators. So for holding and locking up these REQs within a node, you are known as a validator. So instead of being a miner, these people are called validators. And what these validators do is that they sacrifice money into the blockchain in order to have the chance at validating this block or this transaction. So by holding a larger amount of request network, you are going to have a higher percentage chance of potentially validating these blocks. So instead of mining, you validate these blocks and you have a higher chance of actually doing so by holding more. So in a way, you are going to gain more compensation for holding more of a cryptocurrency, because therefore you have a higher stake in validating the transaction. For example, for holding 10,000 REQ, maybe that's the minimum in this example, you are going to have a percentage chance to validate a block, and you're going to be competing against other validators to do this. So it's not just you, hence where the percentage aspect comes in. What's going to be happening is if you have 10,000, somebody else has 20,000, another person has 15,000, you guys are all competing to validate for this block. And so in order to validate the block, you guys are going to put your amount of money into the blockchain, and obviously the person with the most amount of requests is going to have the highest chance of validating it. But because they are percentages, you are going to, while you have a much smaller percentage chance compared to the person who holds 15,000 REQ or 20,000 REQ, you are still going to have the chance to validate it. So that's where proof of stake comes in. The more you hold, the more you're incentivized to purchase more REQ, thus creating the scarcity aspect of, you know, driving the current cryptocurrency's price up. So in REQ's case, they do have a coin burning aspect that's going to increase and drive up the overall price of the currency. But in addition to that, if they do go over to the proof of stake algorithm, people are going to be locking up their REQ, thus also creating scarcity, driving up the price of each individual REQ token. So proof of stake versus proof of work in a nutshell right there, guys. Proof of stake involves holding more of the cryptocurrency at a chance to validate a transaction and being compensated to do so, thus securing the network, where proof of work involves miners solving a block that has transactional data and information, and as a result they take their computing power, devote it to mining that block, and then they are rewarded for the amount of work they do in mining that block and validating the transaction. So the difference between these two are the ways that they validate blocks and the ways that they validate these transactions over the request network. Sorry if this was a bit all over the place. In the video that I'm going to come out with, I'm going to have a more set script on explaining the difference between those, but hopefully I did a decent enough job to let you guys understand the difference between these two algorithms. There may be some information I left out due to the fact that this isn't a super in-depth nature of the video right now, but you know, hopefully you guys got a general idea. And comment down below if there's any questions that you guys have regarding this. But again, hopefully it's my intention that you guys understand these, and you know, this was just kind of me giving my thoughts on it. So it might not be super concise in the way that you guys might see in other videos, but I'm going to link down in the description of this video some other sources that are a little bit more well organized in terms of defining the difference between those, so check those out as well. Another question that you guys might have is, what is the advantages of using proof of stake over proof of work? Well, I'm going to quickly outline the three main reasons proof of stake, in my opinion, is better than proof of work. So the first reason is pretty obvious. You're going to save on energy and power consumption. That is, you know, very black and white. You're not going to be devoting all this electricity, all this mining power to solving a block. Instead, you're going to be validating it through the proof of stake algorithm, which doesn't require that amount of energy or power consumption. The second reason that I believe proof of stake is better than proof of work is because no new coins are going to be generated and transaction fees will be burned, therefore keeping the cryptocurrency deflationary and keeping the price going up over time, as there won't be the option to mine or generate more cryptocurrencies as time progresses. So keeping the cryptocurrency at a stable price and increasing over time. And finally, there's less chance for a 51% attack. What this means is that in order to hard fork the network or do any malicious activity, a single miner in proof of work would have to control over 51% of the network's computing power to create a hard fork, or like I said, maliciously attack the network. So while this is possible and will take a lot of computing power, you know, a lot of money, and a lot of resources behind that, in proof of stake, in order to do this same thing, you would need to control 51% of all the specific cryptocurrency in circulation. So in request network's sake, you would need to control over 51% of all REQ in circulation to launch the same attack that you would be able to do through controlling the resources in proof of work. So obviously a much harder feat to do between the two algorithms if you're looking at those kind of things. So that is the main advantages of proof of stake over proof of work, in my personal opinion. While there are other advantages that I didn't cover, those are the three main ones that I believe you guys should know and keep in mind. Additionally, comment down below if there's anything else that I forgot to cover in this section of the video. I'm kind of winging it, just giving you guys my thoughts based on background knowledge, and I am looking forward to creating a video where I can really outline this in a better way to explain this to you guys. So with that said, let's jump into the last section of the video. The last thing I'm going to touch on in today's video is the idea of sharding, Raiden, and Plasma, scaling solutions that will unchain Ethereum. So this information can be found over on REQ's blog on their Medium page, which will be linked in the description of this video. And I'm going to quickly run through these three things that are going to potentially unchain Ethereum in terms of scaling. So earlier in the video when I talked about request network, obviously one of the main things going forward that was going to decide whether request network moves over to the proof of stake algorithm was what the heck Ethereum is going to be doing in regards to their developments in the future, which involves plasma, sharding, and Raiden. So the three main things that I'm going to cover in this video. So the first thing to understand is that the Ethereum network is dealing with a lot of scaling issues. It can become clogged over time, and there's going to be transaction backlogs and network delays that are going to hurt Ethereum in the long run that need to be solved now. So that's why we're looking at these three solutions. So these three solutions, which are going to be known as sharding, Raiden, and plasma, are solutions that's going to decongest the Ethereum network as well as allow it to scale better in the future. An example of how the current Ethereum platform was congested is the example of CryptoKitties. So while this sounds a little ridiculous, cryptocurrencies is a recently launched decentralized application upon which users used to trade virtual kittens. This went viral and tested the network's capacity, providing essential scaling data and valuable case study for Ethereum's visibility and asset management, and for the Ethereum blockchain's current transactional capabilities. So in a span of 4 days, CryptoKitties went from accounting for 3% of all Ethereum transactions to 11.77%. This resulted in transaction backlogs, network delays, and higher gas fees. So right here, you have a decentralized application known as CryptoKitties, who in 4 days single-handedly clogged the whole Ethereum network in regards to all the transactions that were going through this dApp. Now, this is concerning. So what is Ethereum's solution to this? Well, one solution is sharding, and sharding works in a few ways. So in Ethereum's current state, nodes compete independently to validate a single transaction in exchange for a monetary award. So right now, in Ethereum's network, in order for a transaction to be validated, it has to go through a node. And this node has to store all of the information that has ever gone through it in order to process these transactions. So this includes every single account balance, transaction, and smart contract. So this node is taking a lot of information and is only doing it one at a time in terms of validating transactions. Once a node validates a transaction, other nodes then again verify that this information is correct, update the blockchain, and then move on to the next transaction. So first off, you have a single node that's doing a ton of stuff in regard to the information that it needs to keep and update, and once that transaction is validated, it then has to go to other nodes that additionally have to validate that that node was correct in the first place. So as you guys can see, this is an inefficient method, and it's working for the time being, but as Ethereum continues to scale, this is going to become increasingly inefficient. What does sharding do? Well, sharding allows or will allow nodes and transactions to be divided into smaller groups, meaning more transactions can be validated at once. And nodes only need to store certain segments of the blockchain. Before sharding can be implemented, Ethereum protocol must be upgraded to Casper, which is currently still in development. So what sharding does is basically, instead of throwing all this transactional information and data onto one node, it spreads it out between a ton of different nodes, which only have to validate individual parts of the transaction and only needs to store smaller amounts of the data and information and updating the blockchain. So you're essentially spreading out the workload between a ton of nodes as opposed to one singular node. So that is what sharding is trying to do within the Ethereum network, and is one of the potential things Request Network is looking for in terms of going over to the proof of stake algorithm, and is one of the three possibilities that Ethereum is going to move over to. The second option that Ethereum is considering moving over to in order to scale the Ethereum network is Raiden. So unlike sharding, Raiden proposes to scale the Ethereum network off-chain using state channel technology. So explained simply, off-chain transactions allow a collection of nodes to establish payment channels between each other to facilitate transactions without directly transacting with the Ethereum blockchain and clogging up precious capacity. So the important thing to understand here is that through Raiden, a lot of the transactions aren't going to actually happen on the Ethereum network. It's going to happen off-chain, therefore it won't clog up the precious capacity that Ethereum has, as we saw with cryptocurrencies, or excuse me, CryptoKitties earlier in the video. So what they're going to do is they're going to establish payment channels between each other, the nodes, and this is going to facilitate transactions and isn't going to interfere with the capacity on the Ethereum network and is going to happen off-chain. So that's what they mean by using Raiden. The advantages of using off-chain transactions and doing it this way is that they're faster and cheaper than on-chain transactions because they can be recorded immediately, and fees are only paid for forwarding transaction between nodes. There's no need to wait for block confirmations and pay a competitive fee to incentivize miners to include the transaction in the next block. Those are the main advantage of this. So they continue to say that although these nodes can only communicate with their direct neighbor, transactions can be forwarded from neighbor to reach non-neighboring nodes. The only caveat is that each node must hold a balance greater than or equal to the amount in transactions. So basically, one of the main things that people are looking at that say, might not be the best is with off-chain transactions, nodes can only communicate with the node directly next to them or their direct neighbor. But what you can do is you can move one transaction from one node to their next neighbor, to their next neighbor, to their next neighbor, to reach a node that wasn't actually neighboring the original node, if that makes any sense to you guys. But again, there is one caveat to this in that the node that is holding, in order for one transaction to go from one node to a potentially non-neighboring node, each node that is moving that has to have a balance greater than or equal to the amount being transacted. So hopefully that made sense to you guys. But the important thing to understand with Raiden is it's utilizing off-chain transactions that have a number of benefits as opposed to on-chain transactions within the Ethereum blockchain, which clogs up precious capacity, as we saw with the transaction amount with CryptoKitties and clogging up the network there. Plasma is probably the most important scaling solution that you guys should understand in regards to Request Network specifically. So if I go back to Request Network's white paper, you guys are going to see proof of concept of scaling requests through Plasma Chain with proof of stake. So the first thing they want to see is that there's a proof of concept that you can scale Request Network through the Plasma Chain with the proof of stake algorithm. So they want to make sure that you can actually do this and you can actually scale request by using the Plasma Chain if Ethereum decides to go there using the proof of stake algorithm. So with that said, what is Plasma? So another scaling solution is Plasma, and Plasma uses a series of smart contracts to create hierarchical trees of sidechains. So it can be thought of as a child blockchain that lives within a parent blockchain and relays information back to the root chain, which is Ethereum in this circumstance, periodically. So because each child blockchain is created through a smart contract, it may be governed by its own set of rules and constraints, and transactions can even be reversed if a participant within the child blockchain is proven to have acted maliciously. So with this, each child blockchain is created through a smart contract. So because it's created through a smart contract, it can be governed by its own individual rules and constraints. The caveat to this is that transactions can be reversed if a participant within the child blockchain is proven to have acted maliciously. So if the smart contract within that creates the child blockchain, because it is so customizable and it's governed by its own rules and constraints, there is the ability for this child blockchain to act in a way that is malicious to the network. So the only way, the advantage of being customizable within the smart contract platform and having a child blockchain is these transactions, if found out to be malicious, can be reversed. So theoretically, with this, there's no limit to how many children blockchain can be created. Therefore, Plasma could facilitate nearly infinite scaling. This all happens off-chain, which means like Raiden, with the whole off-chain idea, Plasma gets the benefits of faster and cheaper transactions by being off-chain, and there's the possibility of an infinite amount of scaling due to the fact that there are no limits on how many children blockchains can be made. So the important thing to understand with Plasma is that there's infinite scaling, it's off-chain, so it has all the advantages of being off-chain like Raiden, which we covered in the last section of the video. In addition to this, because each child blockchain is created through using a smart contract, it may be governed by its own set of rules and constraints, making it very customizable. But because of this, there is the possibility that the child blockchain could act maliciously. But for those of you that are worried about that, it can be reversed if proven. So again, that is what Plasma is, and that is how it relates to the Ethereum blockchain in scaling. And the thing that Request Network is waiting for in regards to what they put specifically in their white paper is they want to see that Plasma works. There's a proof of concept that Plasma is legitimate in terms of scaling the Request Network network in regards to the proof of stake algorithm. So they want to see that Plasma works if that's the route that the Ethereum network decides to go, as well as, I'll put it in their own words, they want to see that proof of stake works in regards to scaling specifically with Plasma in the Ethereum network. So hopefully you guys understand what Plasma is and what the Request Network team is looking for in regards to if they go through with the Plasma scaling solution over sharding or Raiden. That's going to do it for the video today, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Comment down below if there's anything else you want to see me cover on this channel. Your support has been amazing, so please keep it up, guys. But what I will say is that after recording this whole video, I realized this is going to be a long one. The initial idea behind this video was just to cover proof of stake between Request Network and the potential to move over to that algorithm. But what actually ended up happening was I explained the potential and the specifics behind the Request Network team and proof of stake, and then I went into actually explaining the difference between proof of stake and proof of work more in depth than I had planned, even though in that section of the video I wanted to make it concise. Additional to that, I also went over sharding, Raiden, and Plasma, so there was a ton of information in this video. Now, I will say that this information is not as in-depth as it could be if I devoted a whole video in and of itself to each of these specific topics. So I do realize that after putting this video out to you guys that I am going to be doing a more in-depth video on the idea of sharding, Raiden, and Plasma and its effects on the Ethereum network, as well as the idea of proof of work versus proof of stake in regards to mining blocks, using validators to validate transactions, and all of that good stuff. So please understand that this information, while it's all great stuff, I am going to be putting out more specific videos so I can cover this in a more in-depth manner in regards to all of that. But with that said, I'm going to end off with a disclaimer that says none of the information in this video is investment or financial advice. Please do your own research before investing. Invest at your own risk. Don't invest more than you're afford to lose. Consult a financial advisor if necessary. And understand this is just my personal opinion in regards to everything going down with the Request Network cryptocurrency. Also, I will say, to be fully transparent with you guys, I am a huge supporter of Request Network. I currently hold Request Network at the time of making this video, and I am invested into REQ. So for transparency's sake, that's where I am at. So make sure to like and subscribe, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching the video, and have a great day.